What would you do if an old, haunted mansion held the key to a dark mystery? Ethan Turner is about to find out. Drawn to the mansion on the hill, a place notorious for making people disappear, Ethan receives an anonymous letter warning him of the secrets hidden inside. But his curiosity is too strong. He has to know what happened to Sarah, the last person to enter and never return. As he steps into the mansion, Ethan's search for the truth becomes a fight against forces he can barely comprehend. Will he uncover the secrets of the mansion, or will he become another victim of its curse? Stay with us to see if Ethan's curiosity will cost him more than just the story.
Behind the doors.
Ethan Turner had a curious heart, fueled by the adrenaline of discovery and a passion for uncovering hidden truths. On that cloudy morning, as the wind softly rustled the dry leaves in the small town of Maplewood, he sat at his desk, immersed in a world of reports and articles about local mysteries. The dim morning light streamed through the window at an angle, creating an atmosphere ripe for reflection. Then, a crumpled brown envelope with no return address caught his eye. With fingers trembling in anticipation, Ethan tore open the envelope to find a handwritten letter, the script hurried and shaky. The mansion on the hill is not just an old house. Sarah, the last one who dared to enter, vanished without a trace. There are secrets that must be uncovered, the message read, echoing through the walls of his mind. Ethan's heart raced. He knew the story of the mansion. Many believed it was haunted, a place where the cries of lost souls could be heard as night fell. Sarah, who is she? He murmured to himself, his mind filling with questions. He remembered hearing whispers around town about a young woman who had ventured into the house, drawn by an inexplicable force. Her disappearance was a mystery that haunted the community, a constant reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows. Determined to investigate, Ethan rose and headed to the town library, where he began researching the mansion and Sarah's tragic story. He flipped through old newspaper clippings filled with reports about the place, stories of screams at night, visions of shadows dancing in the broken windows, and a pervasive sense that something was always watching. With each new piece of information, Ethan's curiosity grew into a burning desire to uncover the truth. "You shouldn't get involved with this, Ethan," warned his friend Laura as they sipped coffee at the town cafe. "The house is dangerous. People talk about what happened there, and many never came back." "But that's exactly why I need to go," Ethan replied, determination etched in his voice. "If I can find out what happened to Sarah, maybe I can help bring peace to the town. And who knows, maybe even to Sarah herself." Laura sighed, clearly worried. "Just be careful. Don't let your curiosity lead you somewhere you can't return from." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Ethan made his way to the mansion, perched atop a hill covered in twisted, dense trees. The path leading there was winding and lined with bushes, as if nature itself were trying to conceal the house from prying eyes. As he approached, Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. The mansion loomed before him, imposing and silent, with dusty windows that seemed to watch his every move. "It's just an old house," Ethan told himself, trying to push away the growing fear. But as soon as he crossed the rusty gate, a strange feeling. It was as if the house itself were alive, pulsing with a dark rhythm. He paused for a moment, listening intently. Then, a soft, almost inaudible whisper floated through the air, calling his name. "Ethan. Ethan." Ethan's heart raced. He looked around, but there was no one there. Only the wind, which seemed to whisper forgotten secrets. With a mix of fear and fascination, he pressed on, determined to uncover the secrets the mansion held. Each step he took toward the entrance was a step deeper into an abyss of mysteries, and perhaps into a web of consequences he could not yet comprehend. Ethan hesitated for a moment at the mansion's door, his hand trembling slightly as he prepared to push it open. The air around him felt heavy, as if the house were breathing, waiting for his entry. With a deep breath, he finally made up his mind, and the door creaked open, revealing the dark, dusty interior. The smell of mold and rotting wood filled his nostrils, intensifying the discomfort that had followed him since he received the anonymous letter. As soon as he stepped inside, The daylight faded, and shadows danced on the walls as his eyes adjusted to the dimness. The wooden floor creaked under his feet, and a cold shiver ran down his spine. "Sarah," he murmured, remembering the young woman whose life had been tragically cut short. Her name echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of what drove him to be there. Deep in the room, Ethan spotted an old, dusty desk. Approaching it, he noticed a small locked box. With some effort, he managed to open it, revealing a worn diary. The pages were yellowed, and the words were scrawled in hurried handwriting. "Visions. Voices. I am not alone," he read aloud, feeling a chill run through his body. "What happened here?" he whispered, as if the walls could answer. As he examined the diary, a yellowed photograph fell out. Ethan picked it up, revealing a group of smiling young people gathered in front of the mansion. Sarah and her friends, he thought, recognizing the face of the girl who had drawn him there. However, beside her, other faces also caught his attention. One young man, in particular, seemed familiar. "Mark," Ethan murmured, remembering the name he had heard around town. "He's the only one who survived." Determined to learn more, Ethan pulled the diary closer. Sarah's notes spoke of strange experiences, of whispers calling her name, of shadows moving through the house. "If you're reading this, don't come in," he read in one entry, a warning that made his heart race. "They are always watching. We should never have come here." "You're not going to leave me here, are you?" A male voice interrupted his thoughts. Ethan quickly turned around, seeing a young man with disheveled hair and a lost look standing in the doorway. "Mark?" Ethan asked, recognizing him instantly. You're the only one who survived?" Mark hesitated, his gaze. "I survived, but I'm not really alive." His voice was a whisper, as if he feared the house itself would swallow him. "All my friends, they're gone, and I'm responsible." "Responsible? What do you mean?" Ethan questioned, curiosity mingling with empathy. What happened on the night of the accident? What really happened here? Mark took a deep breath, his hands trembling. "It was a night of fun. We were enjoying ourselves. But something changed. The voices started calling, and we couldn't resist. A tragedy occurred, and I was the only one who got out. Since then, I've tried to forget, but the house won't let me go." The tension between them grew, Mark's story reverberating off the mansion's walls. Ethan felt the weight of the young man's suffering, and at the same time, the urgency to understand what had happened. "We need to find out what happened to Sarah and her friends. This diary might help us," Ethan suggested, holding the diary close. Mark looked down, his eyes full of pain. "You don't understand. The house doesn't want you to find out. It's already taken many, and it might want you too." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "But I can't stop now. We need to know the truth." He realized that the determination in his gaze was also a way of confronting his own fears. If you really want to do this, the house has its own secrets, and not all of them are benevolent. With those words, the atmosphere around them seemed to shift, as if the house itself were watching, eager to reveal its mysteries. Ethan knew he was about to delve deeper into a journey that could cost more than just the truth. Mark was visibly apprehensive as he approached the mansion once more. The wind howled between the trees as if nature itself were warning them not to approach. The daylight was slowly fading, creating a dark and oppressive atmosphere. Ethan, on the other hand, was determined. He felt that there was something deeper to be discovered there, something that Mark, through his pain and loss, could not see. "Are you really sure this is a good idea?" Mark asked hesitantly as he stopped in front of the mansion's door. His hands trembled slightly, and he looked at Ethan with a mix of concern and fear. "We should leave this in the past. I know it's difficult, but we need to understand what happened. Sarah deserves that," Ethan replied, his voice firm. He knew that the search for the truth could be dangerous, but it was also the only way to bring closure to everyone involved. Mark let out a heavy sigh. "All right, but if something happens, don't say I didn't warn you." With a brusque movement, He pushed the door, which creaked ominously as if protesting the intrusion. The interior of the mansion was shrouded in shadows, and the smell of mold and rotten wood filled their nostrils. The two entered and were immediately enveloped by an oppressive atmosphere. The walls were covered in dust and cobwebs, and the floor creaked under their feet. The sunlight timidly filtered through the broken windows, casting shadows that seemed to dance around them. "Let's go straight to the room we found last time," Ethan suggested, and Mark nodded, though his expression showed he wasn't convinced of the safety of their endeavor. As they made their way to the back of the house, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. A chill ran down his spine, and he paused for a moment, straining to listen. "Did you hear that?" he asked in a whisper. Mark stopped too, his expression tense. "What did you hear?" "It was like a whisper. Something calling me," Ethan replied, and doubt began to creep into his mind. "Come on, we need to keep going." When they reached the door of the secret room, Ethan pulled the handle, but it was locked. "This is where Sarah kept her discoveries. We need to get in," he insisted. Mark hesitated. "What if we shouldn't? What if there's something in there we're not ready to face?" "We can't back down now," Ethan said determinedly. He stepped back a few steps and, with a push, threw his shoulder against the door. It gave way with a deafening crash, revealing a room covered in dust and mystery. Inside, personal belongings were scattered everywhere, and a porcelain doll caught Ethan's attention. An inscription on its base read, "Do not wake." "What does this mean?" Mark took a step back, uneasy. "This is disturbing. I don't like this, Ethan. We need to leave now." Before Ethan could respond, a shadow moved quickly at the back of the room, like a breath of cold air. An involuntary cry escaped Mark's mouth, and they ran toward the door. "I don't want to die here," he shouted, his panic now evident. But Ethan stopped, holding the door firmly, his heart pounding. "No, wait! We need to face this. We can't let fear control us." Mark looked at Ethan, his eyes full of terror. "You're crazy. This isn't just a house, Ethan. There are things here we can't explain. I know it's risky, but if we don't face it, we'll never know the truth," Ethan replied, his voice firm. He was determined to find out what really happened in that mansion, even if it meant confronting his own demons. "I need to do this." With one last desperate look, Mark hesitated but finally took a step back. "You're on your own then. I can't stay. If you go, I can't help you." And with that, he disappeared through the door, leaving Ethan alone in the darkness, determined to face the reality hidden in the abandoned mansion. Ethan stood in the middle of the dark room. The heavy atmosphere of the mansion seemed to intensify, as if the structure itself were alive, absorbing the tension between the two. The echo of whispers that once seemed distant now reverberated in his mind, their words, though indistinct, carrying a weight Ethan couldn't ignore. "You don't understand, Ethan. We need to get out of here now," Mark pleaded, his voice trembling. He approached the door, but Ethan was already moving away, drawn by an invisible force guiding him toward the darkness. "I need to know more. Something is calling me, Mark." "I feel like I'm close to discovering the truth," Ethan replied, the determination in his voice mingling with a certain fear. Mark shook his head, his disheveled hair falling over his forehead. "The truth? The truth is that this house is a tomb. Those who enter don't leave. You heard the whispers, didn't you? They're trying to warn you." A chill ran down Ethan's spine, but he didn't give in. What if those whispers are the key? I can't just ignore them. He turned around, observing the dancing shadows on the walls, trying to discern something between them. With a frustrated sigh, Mark walked over to one of the dust-covered windows. "If you don't leave now, it might be too late. The last person who got lost here, she never came back." His voice was somber, as if the words were a warning to Ethan and a lament for Sarah. But he approached a wall that seemed different, the wooden boards more worn, as if they were hiding something. When he touched the surface, a sensation of cold ran through his fingers. "Mark, help me with this. There's something here." Mark hesitated, but upon seeing the determination in Ethan's eyes, he reluctantly approached. Together they pushed against the wall, which slowly gave way, revealing a passage that led to a dark, damp basement. The air down there was thick, laden with the smell of mold and something else, something that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. "I don't like this, Ethan. Let's go back," Mark shouted, retreating as he felt the pressure of the darkness emanating from the basement. "Mark, please. I'm almost there," Ethan insisted, descending the stairs, the light from his flashlight flickering like a candle in a storm. As he went deeper, strange symbols began to appear on the walls, crudely carved as if they were marks of a forgotten ritual. "Look at this," Ethan said, pointing to a particular symbol that seemed to glow faintly. "What do you think it means?" "I don't know, but it's not good." "Let's leave before something happens," Mark replied, his voice now a whisper, almost lost in the darkness of the room. Ethan ignored the warning and approached an old locked box covered in dust. It was small but emanated a strange energy, as if it were alive. "We need to open this," he said, more to himself than to Mark. "Are you crazy?" "What do you think you'll find in there?" Mark questioned, his voice filled with despair. "Didn't you see what happened to Sarah? And those others? Why do you want to end up like them?" "Because I need to know. What happened here needs to be revealed." "I can't leave without understanding," Ethan replied, his determination growing as the box's pulsations seemed to intensify. Mark stepped back, looking around as if he feared something was about to manifest. "If you open that, it won't just be the truth that comes out. It could be something much worse." Ethan hesitated for a moment, feeling the pressure of the choice. The shadows around him seemed to close in, and the whispers grew louder, now almost like desperate screams. "Mark, I can't turn back. We're already here. We need to find out what this house wants to tell us." Mark's eyes were filled with terror, but Ethan didn't waver. With trembling hands, he sought a way to open the box, determined to uncover the secrets the mansion had been guarding for so long. The tense atmosphere enveloped them, and as the moment approached, they both knew that nothing would ever be the same. Ethan hesitated for an instant before the ancient box, his fingers trembling as he opened it. As soon as the lid lifted, a wave of almost tangible energy emanated from within, as if the house itself were breathing through that object. Immediately, tumultuous visions began to invade his mind. Familiar faces, distant laughter, and an oppressive sense of despair. He saw the mansion in its glory days, full of life, but soon the images distorted, revealing scenes of dark rituals, with candles lit and whispers reverberating off the walls. "Ethan! Ethan!" Mark's voice cut through the trance, sounding distant, as if trying to cross an invisible barrier. "Snap out of it. You need to come back." But the box's influence was powerful, and Ethan felt himself being pulled into the visions. He saw the house's former inhabitants, dark and tormented figures, performing rituals to bind their souls to the living world. Each act was marked by a desperate intensity, a quest for control over what could not be controlled. He could almost hear the muffled screams of those who had succumbed to the same need for power, for immortality. "Ethan, listen to me," Mark shouted, his voice now filled with panic. "You need to get out. They're coming closer." At that moment, Ethan realized he wasn't alone. Footsteps echoed in the distance, and the darkness around him seemed to stir. He tried to focus on Mark, but the visions held him captive as if the house were deciding his fate. His friend's presence was a thread of hope, but reality was slowly fading away. "Who's there?" Ethan managed to murmur, his voice almost lost among the murmurs that filled the air. His heart raced when a shadow took shape before him, an indistinct silhouette that slowly approached. "Ethan." The voice was soft, almost melodious, but it carried immense weight. The figure illuminated, revealing itself as Sarah, the girl whose disappearance had started this whole journey. Her face was pale, her eyes empty, but there was a deep and comprehensible sadness in her gaze. You are Sarah?" Ethan stammered, struggling to process the reality of the apparition. The feeling of being in a dream intensified, but the pain in his chest anchored him. "Yes, it's me." Her voice was like an echo, reverberating in the dark room. "I'm trapped here just like the others. You need to understand what happened, Ethan." Mark, still nearby, observed in silence, his face reflecting despair and helplessness. "This isn't good, Ethan," She's here, but not by choice. Don't trust her. Shut up, Ethan replied, frustration evident in his voice. He turned back to Sarah, who seemed to twist under the pressure of the situation. What do you want from me? Liberation. Her words were laden with deep yearning. We were victims of a ritual meant to protect us, but it trapped us here instead. You are the key, Ethan. You can help us, but you need to understand the truth. Stop beating around the bush. What do I need to do? Urgency grew within him as the darkness around him seemed to close in. You must confront what's inside you. What binds you to this house, Sarah explained, her voice now a whisper. Only then can we find peace. The tension in the room increased, and Ethan could feel the threatening presence of the house around him, as if the walls were closing in. He turned to Mark, who looked increasingly terrified. Mark, what do you know about this? What happened to you and your friends? Mark hesitated, his eyes narrowing. We can't stay here, Ethan. We need to leave before it's too late. But Ethan's determination didn't waver. He looked at Sarah, seeking an answer, any answer that could help them escape this prison. I can't leave you here. I won't let you stay trapped. You're stronger than you think, Sarah said, her voice now almost a whisper. But you'll need to face the truth you yourself are hiding. The shadows began to stir, and Ethan felt a wave of courage mixed with primal fear. He was about to discover the secrets the house kept, and the truth might be more terrifying than anyone could imagine. The atmosphere in the mansion was heavy, as if the very air was thick with despair and unspoken secrets. Ethan, paralyzed by the ethereal presence of Sarah, the young woman who had disappeared years ago, felt his heart race. The spectral figure before him emanated a deep sadness, her empty eyes reflecting the torment of imprisoned souls. He knew that every word she spoke could be the key to unraveling the mystery surrounding the house and, at the same time, his own life. Ethan. Sarah's voice echoed softly, like the whisper of a breeze. You need to understand. We weren't here by chance. We were chosen. Chosen for what? Ethan questioned, incredulity mixing with fear. What happened to you and your friends? A ritual. The word left her lips like a lament. We were drawn in by the promise of something grand, something we should never have sought. They deceived us. Now we're trapped, condemned to wander forever, unless you do what needs to be done. Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. The weight of her words seemed to accumulate in his chest. And what should I do? How can I help you and the others? You are the key, Ethan, Sarah insisted, her form beginning to glow with a soft light. Your arrival was foretold. Only you can break the curse that binds us to this place, but it will come with a price. Mark, who had been silently observing until then, finally spoke, his face pale, reflecting the horror of the revelation. Don't listen, Ethan. She's manipulating you. The house wants to consume your soul like it did with ours. Why didn't you tell me, Mark? Ethan turned to his friend, the pain and betrayal mixing in his voice. Why did you— That if I didn't come back, none of this would happen again. But you brought it all back. Sarah intervened, her presence emanating an almost supernatural calm. Mark, you can't run anymore. You are one of them. And now you have the chance to find peace. But Ethan, he needs to decide. Ethan looked at each of them, his mind spinning with the magnitude of what was about to happen. If I'm the key, what exactly do I need to do? You must offer your essence to the house, Sarah explained, her somber eyes filling with hope. Only then can we break the cycle. But this means you must be willing to sacrifice yourself. The silence that followed was deafening. The echoes of voices from the past seemed to whisper around them, as if the house were waiting for a decision. Ethan felt the pressure of fate accumulating on his shoulders. It was a choice between life and death, between freedom and eternal damnation. Ethan, Mark began, his voice trembling. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. If not me, then who? Ethan replied, a determination growing inside him. If this ends your suffering, then I'll do it. Mark tried to pull him away, but Ethan was already approaching Sarah, feeling the energy pulsing around him. "I'm ready," he declared, his voice firm. "Do what needs to be done." Sarah smiled, an expression that mixed sadness and gratitude. "Thank you, Ethan. You won't be forgotten." Then Ethan closed his eyes and felt a wave of energy flow through him, as if the house itself were absorbing his essence. Memories of his life, of his loves and fears, began to fade as he became part of the ritual. The ground beneath his feet trembled, and an intense light enveloped the mansion. Mark watched, paralyzed, as the light engulfed Ethan and Sarah. The house began to disintegrate, walls fading into dust, revealing the blue sky of the morning. And in the last moment, Ethan smiled, knowing that he was finally freeing not only those who were imprisoned, but also himself. As the morning light illuminated the place, Mark felt a wave of peace wash over him, knowing that finally the pain was coming to an end. He turned, gazing at the horizon, where the sun rose majestically, free from the shadows that had once bound him.